All right, Alpine head coach Ian here to talk about Thursday, October 1st. Happy first day of October and happy Thursday. Last week we found a 3 rep max overhead squat. We've never really done that before, not since I've been programming. So that's one of the reasons why, if you remember during that day, I started off with some pretty large sets. All right. Main focus is, especially for those who this is their first time ever really going to that heavy of an overhead squat, technique. Now, what are we doing this week? Well, we're first going to start off with a 400-meter run for our core temp warm-up. And then we're going to do 2 rounds of 6 IG Maginis with a presses each arm. So we haven't done these in a hot minute, but we used to do them all the time. So use them on a crossover or a light band, no heavier than red if we're using one of the resistance bands. With this, we are making sure that with that IG Magini, that we're keeping those shoulder blades packed, meaning pinched together, so nice active shoulders the whole time. Remember that IG Magini is an external rotation to that 90-90, and then a press up, making sure that when we press up, we're not forward, but that bicep is in line with our ears, also known as when we press up, we're in that frontal plane. Then 10 total alternated lunges, that's no weight here, and then 30-second star plank. All right, reason for the IG Magini with the press is to get some single arm stability. Lunges, because we are doing that later in our accessory work, and the star plank to work on some single arm core stability. Once you guys are done with the 2 rounds, remainder of time, you're going to build up to what? Our working weight. And so our working weight is going to be every 2 minutes for 12 minutes. That's 6 sets, 6 overhead squats at 75 to 80% of our 3-rep max. I do suggest with this, if you are going to go to that 80%, we want to be at that 80% by our 3rd set, but all working sets are 75% to 80% here. Things that I noticed when coaching these overhead squats last week is that we need to keep our core to extremity principle going. And what I mean by that is that you need to keep, when we're squatting in general, especially with that overhead squatting, we need to keep that midline, which is everything from our abs to our erectors behind our back, and our glutes, as tight as possible, especially during that descent of our squat and at the bottom. We cannot get lazy when we're in any type of squatting, when we're at the bottom, but especially when we're overhead squatting. If we loosen everything down there, all this and our shoulders are going to get super wonky, and it's just not going to feel good, and it's going to be not safe at all. So keep the core tight, keep the midline tight, all of that, keep that midline engagement, and the overhead squat's going to feel better. So coaches, watch for people who are they're just dropping down, having to but you can tell they're trying to stabilize every time they try to come back up. These squats, they don't need to be fast, they just need to be, stable. All right, everything needs to be stable. All right, so every 2 minutes for 12 minutes, 6 sets. That's 6 overhead squats at 75 to 80% of that 3-rep max that they found the previous week. During these whole entire weeks, we're just going to linearly progress that weight until we retest either a 3-rep, or who knows, if people start showing me that, wow, we're really stable with those heavy loads, we might go to a 1-rep. Then, our accessory for this week is going to be 3 sets of 8 each arm single kettlebell front rack lunges in place. Last week we did single arm overhead lunges. This week I wanted to stay away from that overhead because we did a lot of overhead previously on Wednesday and Monday, so I want to give that a little bit of a breather there, a break. So instead of being over here, single arm front rack with a kettlebell. So with that kettlebell isn't resting on top of that shoulder there. No, what I want everyone to do is you're going to make this nice little shelf here, right in this little triangle area, and that's where the kettlebell is going to be sitting. So if you think about it, hand is going to be underneath chin on our sternum, all right? And then, the the higher up your elbow is, the easier it's going to be. Otherwise, you're sitting right there. So if it's in my right arm, I'm going to take 8 steps with my left leg, and then I'll put it with my left arm, 8 steps with my right leg. Then a 30-second wall sit with Medbal between the knees. So the weight of the Medball isn't really the point here. It's how active you are squeezing that Medball and getting those adductors involved into that wall sit. So that wall sit isn't just quads, but we have adductors joining the party. All right, with that being the case, we want to make sure that our stance is correct. So our feet should be about shoulder width apart. All right, maybe in a little bit more for this wall sit. Coaches, make sure you see that when they are actively pushing into that ball, that their knees are not inside of their feet or their toes. They're still tracking their toes. So be very vigilant of that, coaches. And then a 30-second sandbag or sandball bear hug. All right. We want this to be heavy too. So we're going to see some people rocking that 200-pound sand bag. And if that's too heavy, we have stones, friends. So let's also put stones as an option also, because odd object work is great for us. Now, when we're doing this, we're not only thinking about keeping those shoulder blades pinched and that chest tall, but also squeeze the pecs and squeeze your abs the whole entire time. If you do this right, you shouldn't so much feel it in that lower back. You really shouldn't feel it in the lower back. It's more of, oh, I can feel my shoulder blades are pinching and they're engaged, so that thoracic spine is, those muscles in our thoracic spine are rocking and rolling, upper back rocking and rolling, and I feel my abs there too. All right. With that being said, also make sure that knees are locked out, butt is squeezed. All right. So let me just summarize that point there. Shoulder blades pinched back with a nice pec squeeze also. Abs tight, so we're not leaning back, but nice and straight upright and rigid. Knees locked out, butt squeeze, hip locked out. So, once again, this is an overhead squat, and then stability and strength focused day. Love you guys. Bye.